Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. Today is the 9th of August 2023, and these are the stories that we'll try to discuss and decipher during the course of our show. We'll begin with the dissolution of this current government, of this current parliament. The Prime Minister has said he's going to write to President Dr. Arif Alvi for dissolution of the National Assembly. Tonight, also, the opposition leader Raja Riaz will be meeting with the Prime Minister tomorrow for the name of the caretaker Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has also said that consultations are underway with the coalition parties to agree on a neutral interim Prime Minister for the interim government. The Prime Minister also addressed the Parliament. He talked about the previous government. He talked about the challenges that his government had when it came into power, and of course how they managed to administer the country during the 16 months that they were given the authority to do so. This is going to be our first segment. Our second story concerns terrorism and Pakistan dispatching a senior diplomat to Afghanistan for a 3-day trip with a clear message that the Afghan interim government needs to abide by the commitment it has made with the international community in Doha as far as the trickling down of terrorism from the Afghan soil into Pakistan is concerned. The Afghan Taliban supreme leader has also warned fighters against launching attacks outside the war-torn country. This was stated by the defense minister of the Afghan interim government, who said that this is not equivalent to any kind of jihad but just war. And so of course he has given a very clear statement as far as that is concerned. Will that statement be put into written and given to Pakistan? That only time will tell. We'll be discussing that and different aspects of that in our second story. Then we'll be talking about India and the existence of lower caste Hindus in Modi's India that are in danger. We've talked about that many a times in the past as well, whether it be the Dalits, whether it be others. The fact remains that minorities in India do not have any kind of freedom of expression, freedom of living as per their rights. The latest being, of course, the lower caste Hindus. But of course, the lower caste Hindus, as per the Hindu tradition, were always treated with a certain downgraded form of way of thinking and way of leading their lives. But that said, in 2021 alone, more than 60,000 crimes have been reported against the Dalit Hindus. We'll be highlighting that as far as a report that has come out very recently about the way the Indian government is treating its minority Hindus, especially the Dalits. And finally, we'll be talking about the Beijing rains in China that have caused havoc across China, and the casualties have risen to 33, including 5 rescuers. 18 people remain missing. Damage to almost 150,000 homes, collapse of 59,000 homes, and a lot of damage that has happened in China. Rains do not just cause havoc in Pakistan, they also cause havoc across the world, including in our brotherly country of China. Let's begin with our first segment, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the dissolution of the current assembly, the 16 months of this current government, and of course the address of our Prime Minister to the Parliament, and his discussion with Raja Riaz tomorrow as well, as far as the name of an interim Prime Minister rather is concerned. Niaz Murtaza, who is a foreign political consultant, joins us online. Dr. Niaz Murtaza, thank you very much to have joined us. First of all, tell us a little bit, what's your impression of the 16 months of this current government that is coming to an end? What kind of challenges do you feel that this government had when it came into power?
Well, the first challenge that this government faced was the fact that, the PTI government had left behind a big emergency, economic crisis. So, the foreign reserves had fallen from about $20 billion with the State Bank at the end of August 2021, and they fell to about $10 billion on 9th April 2022, and PTI handed over the government reluctantly after the vote of no confidence to the new government. So that was, the biggest thing. And then the other related challenge was that, the PTI had failed to, renew the IMF program, and in fact it had taken some measures like reducing the petrol levy that IMF was demanding that it should increase. So that meant that, it became even more difficult for the new government to, go back to the IMF and renew the program that had been stalled for over 6 months. So that was the first crisis. The second crisis was, the Ukraine crisis. The war had started sometimes in February 2022, and by April it was in full swing, and it had started affecting, the flow of oil, the flow of gas, etc., the flow of trade, even otherwise. So that was a second thing. And then pretty soon, the PTI government started this, endless kind of, protest and agitation against the government. And then finally, by August, we had this huge flood, the biggest in 100 years in Pakistan. So, it was one crisis after another. And so pretty much the whole period with the new government was, about dealing with one crisis after another. And that has obviously affected what could be achieved in these. It was a small period to begin with. No government can achieve much within 16 months. And on top of that, there were all these issues.
All right, Dr. Niaz, Murtaza, you forgot the challenge of terrorism that we are still confronted with, as far as, the trickling down of outfits from across Afghanistan is concerned. And then we had our diminishing relations with important global powers because of the previous government's cipher, the whole cipher that emanated and put a huge dent in our relationship with the US. Then our relationship with China, our relationship with other countries were also on a downward spiral. This was another foreign affairs, another challenge that we had, as far as regaining the strength or regaining the confidence of our partners across the world.
Well, yes, that was another huge issue that with almost every major donor, major power, we had bad ties because of the way, the last government, the PTI government had dealt with them. So not just USA, but even European Union and especially France, which is, one of the two biggest powers within the European Union. There were incidents where the French president called our prime minister of that time, and the calls went begging. Then there were bad ties with China because of the slowdown on CPEC, some of the attacks on the Chinese, and then even the Gulf states like Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia was upset about some of the remarks that had been made by our prime minister about the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. So all around us, we had really bad ties, and then even, the uptick in terrorism that you mentioned, it was primarily because of the policy of the last government, resettle Taliban, Tehrik-e-Taliban fighters in KP, especially Fatah. So all in all, it was 360 degrees of crisis that the government inherited. And, 16 months is too short a period to deal with them. And, some of them are still continuing.
Now, Dr. Niaz, Murtaza, now that 16 months have passed, the government is ending its tenure. Do you feel that it achieved, if not all of the targets that it had, but at least a majority of the targets that it had put forward as to stabilizing the country and putting it back on the right foot?
Well, I think with the IMF there was a bit of a zigzag. Initially, they were able to get back to IMF and get one or two of the installments released. But then there was a period where there were some misunderstanding between the government and IMF, and for several months, there was no new installments that were coming, and then that really affected our foreign reserves. They went down below 4 billion. But then in the last few weeks, that problem got resolved, and we were able to sign a new standby agreement, which is a 9-month agreement. And that is supposed to, bridge over the period of, the new interim government so that, a new government can come in and then, strike another longer term deal because, our reserves are still not very high. They're about $8 to $9 billion now. And most probably we'll need another IMF deal after this one expires. So, it's a temporary interim step. And as soon as the new government comes in, and there's a high chance that it might be again another PDM government, then, they'll have to go back to the IMF and resolve the issue.
All right, Dr. Niaz, do you feel that at the end of the tenure of this government that we have somehow managed to restore to a large extent the ties with our major partners?
Yeah, that is actually true. You can see the warming up, and it was, manifested in the fact that, China gave us more deposits, Saudi Arabia, UAE gave us more deposits. So, we were on the verge of, default year towards the end of the last year, but, that issue finally got resolved. With the USA, things have improved. There have been exchanges of visits and, some agreements in some areas. And the USA supported us on, the striking of this new IMF deal. At the end, its intervention was very helpful. China, the Vice Premier visited us last week. So, yeah, we were, in a sort of a foreign policy meltdown with extremely bad ties with all our major stakeholders. And, one by one, those
all right. Dr. Niaz, also, as far as climate change is concerned, do you feel we also managed to hold our head high and present Pakistan's point of view internationally, whether it be through the COPs, whether it be through the different the other moods that Pakistan was part of? I think the communication has been disconnected between Dr. Niaz Murtaza, and we will try, of course, to get in touch with Dr. Niaz Murtaza. Nevertheless, this is what Dr. Niaz Murtaza said, and of course, the 16 months tenure of this current government comes to an end. The consultations will be held tomorrow with the of course leader of the opposition Raja Riaz and Prime Minister Mr. Shehbaz Sharif as to finalizing the name of the interim Prime Minister of Pakistan, and of course we'll be sharing with you as soon as that news comes to the forefront as well. This was our first story. Let's come to our second, and that concerns Afghanistan, trickling off elements that are destabilizing the country from across the Afghan border into Pakistan. And of course, Pakistan that has now sent a senior envoy to Kabul for a 3-day trip with a very clear message as to the responsibility that Afghanistan has. More in the following report.
Pakistan has witnessed a sharp spike in terrorism across the country, which is perpetrated by the banned Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and its splinter groups. Terror activities in the country have soared by 79% during the first half of 2023, a statistical report released by independent think tank Pakistan Institute for Conflict and Security Studies showed. Pakistan has deplored the convenience and freedom with which militants have been launching attacks in Pakistan from Afghanistan and has been urging Afghan rulers to take action. Islamabad has repeatedly raised concerns over the use of Afghan soil by militants for cross-border terrorism. Afghanistan's supreme leader has warned Taliban members against carrying out attacks abroad, days after Islamabad hinted at involvement of Afghan citizens in suicide attacks inside Pakistan. Mohammad Yaqub Mujahid said in a speech to members of Afghanistan security forces that fighting outside Afghanistan is not religiously sanctioned jihad, but rather war, which had been barred by Supreme Leader Hibatullah Akhundzada. Development came days after a deadly bombing claimed by the militant Islamic State group near the shared frontier killed scores of people and injured dozens others in a suicide attack during a convention of Jamaat-e-Ulama-e-Islam Fazl Party in Bajaur district. International community is concerned regarding liberty of action available to terrorists in Afghanistan, so Afghan government has to ensure concrete measures to combat menace of transnational terrorism.
Now, to discuss this very important issue, we have with us online Brigadier retired Mahmood Shah. He's a senior analyst. Brigadier Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Brigadier Saab, let's begin with the statement by our Chief of the Army Staff, General Asim Munir, who said the involvement of Afghan nationals in terrorism incidents in Pakistan is detrimental to regional peace and stability. In your point of view, how should Pakistan respond? We've sent an envoy for 3 days to Kabul. What more should we do? Brigadier Saab, can you hear us? Okay, let's before we get hold of Brigadier retired Mahmood Shah, senior analyst, let me just explain a little bit of what has been emanating. Pakistan has dispatched a senior diplomat to Kabul for a 3-day trip with a clear message that the interim Afghan government will have to abide by the commitment it has made with the international community as far as the Doha agreement is concerned. The Afghan supreme leader, the Afghan Taliban supreme leader, has also warned the fighters against launching attacks outside Afghanistan. This was confirmed in a statement by the Defense Minister of the interim Afghan government. Mohammad Yaqub Mujahid said in a speech to members of the Afghan security forces that was also broadcast on state television that fighting outside Afghanistan is not religiously sanctioned jihad but is rather war, which has been barred by Supreme Leader Hibatullah Akhundzada. We've now been joined by Brigadier retired Mahmood Shah, senior analyst. Sir, can you hear us? Can you hear us, Brigadier Saab? Well, there seems to be an issue because can you hear us, sir? All right, let me continue with what has happened as far as Afghanistan is concerned. Now, Mohammad Yaqub Mujahid, who's a defense minister of the interim Afghan government, has said in a speech to members of the Afghan security forces, this message was also broadcast on national television, state television in Afghanistan. He said that fighting outside Afghanistan is not religiously sanctioned quote-unquote jihad, but rather war, which has been barred by Supreme Leader Hibatullah Akhundzada. So there is a clear statement as far as the differentiation between jihad and what is happening outside of Afghanistan by whether it be the IS or whether it be by the TTP. He said again, and I quote, if anyone goes outside of Afghanistan for the goal of jihad, it will not be called jihad. If the Amir prevents the Mujahideen from going to battle and they still do it this year, this is a war, not jihad, and this is a very clear indication of what the Afghan supreme leader of the Afghan Taliban is intent on highlighting as far as the differentiation between what is happening of the trickling of such incidents from across the Afghan border into Pakistan is concerned. In Islam, the Arabic term jihad, you all know, is used to describe a wide range of religious struggles, from the private spiritual realm to taking part in combat. Brigadier retired Mahmood Shah, senior analyst, joins us online. Brigadier Saab, can you hear us now? Brigadier Saab, can you hear us? Brigadier Mahmood Shah, can you hear us? Well, let me just cite some of the things that have been happening. We've told you about the envoy that has gone on a 3-day official visit to Kabul to, of course, give Pakistan's message as far as this trickling down of terror outfits from the Afghan soil into Pakistan is concerned. Also, the statement by the Supreme Leader Hibatullah Akhundzada is extremely important in this whole context. Whether the TTP, whether the IS stop their activities within Pakistan is something that we will all have to see. Pakistan has also urged the Afghan interim government to take action against these terrorists that operate on its soil to stop this transnational terrorism. This, of course, followed the deadly suicide attack that you also saw in the report that we showed you in a tribal district that claimed more than 60 lives. The blast took place in Bajor district's Khar, a former tribal area that borders Afghanistan. It was, of course, targeted at the Jamiat Ulema Islam Fazlur Rahman group gathering, killed at least 64 people and injured over 100 people. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has also expressed concern over the liberty of action available to terrorists in Afghanistan. He has urged the Taliban-led interim government to take action to stop this transnational terrorism. The Premier also noted that the involvement of the Afghan citizens in the suicide blasts and the liberty of action available to the elements hostile to Pakistan in planning and executing such cowardly attacks from the sanctuaries across the border was something that needed to stop. The interim Afghan government should undertake concrete measures towards denying its soil to be used for transnational terrorism. The envoy is in Kabul as we speak. Let's see how the talks go along. Let's see now that we've had a very clear statement from the Afghan Supreme Leader as far as the differentiation between jihad and war is concerned, and the barring of such activities outside of the Afghan soil is concerned. Will the TTP heed the advice of the Afghan Supreme Leader? Will the IS heed the advice of the Afghan Supreme Leader? Only time will tell. Let's come to our next story, and that concerns India and the existence of lower caste Hindus in Modi's India that is in danger because of an annual report that has come from the National Crime Records Bureau that blasts the Modi government's claim of democracy, citing the number of incidents that involve Dalits. More in the following report.
India is undergoing a transformation from a relatively secular state into a Hindutva-inspired Rashtra under the watchful eye of the BJP. Under the poisonous Hindutva ideology, non-Hindus and lower caste Hindus are relegated into a subhuman existence in the Rashtra. Muslims, Christians, Dalits, and Sikh are deprived of social justice and are treated as second-class citizens in India. The persecution of Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, and low-caste Hindus has increased manifold since BJP came into power, while Hindutva leaders are openly calling for violence against Muslims and other minorities in India. The National Crime Records Bureau's annual report blasted the Modi's government claims of democracy. In 2021 alone, more than 60,000 crimes were reported against Dalit Hindus. Over 250,000 hate crimes reported against lower caste Hindus in the last 5 years, according to the National Crime Records Bureau. On an average, an incident of violence against a Dalit occurs every 10 minutes every day. About 90% of poor and 95% of uneducated Hindus are lower caste Hindus, as per the International Dalit Conference. Crimes against the Dalit Hindus increased by 66% after the Modi government came into power. The politically motivated, divisive policies are promoting Hindu majoritarianism in India, which is tearing the Indian states apart.
Abid Latif Sindhu, Senior Analyst, joins us online. Sindhu Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Sindhu Saab, when you know about this report that talks openly about the incidents involving Dalits in India, we have talked so much about the Muslims in India and in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Elsewhere in India, we have talked about the Christians, we've talked about the Sikhs, and now even the Dalits are not spared. How, in your point of view, is this BJP government also manipulating old Hindu scriptures to spew hatred against the low caste Hindus? Nothing new there, but nevertheless it has kind of gained intensity.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Actually, in 2000, just once you were, talking about the same issue, just came to my mind. There was a book written in 2014 by Doniger with the title "The Hindu," in which he explicitly explained that how the Hindu religious text is being used to exploit the scheduled classes, the other castes which are not part of the Varna. Varna means the four declared castes in which Hindu society is in social hierarchy is divided. So, as far as even the Indian Constitution is concerned, the Article 46 gives the right to the scheduled caste and also the scheduled tribes. It sort of grants the social protection to them. But in actual terms, when we see that practically what is being practiced there, the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribes, and also the minorities in terms of, if you have already mentioned, the Muslims, the Christians, the Jain, the Buddhists, they're all being marginalized to that periphery of the demographic population of India, where they are either being suppressed physically or psychologically and are being forced to either, especially for the Muslims and Christians, to convert into Hinduism, or they have even threatened to even excommunicated. They are excommunicated from the society in terms of different laws which we have seen they've tried to promulgate in India. Rather, they are being practiced there as a legal weapon to with these segments of the society. So, if we see that, how will it affect the complete polity of the Indian population? I would say that India claims itself to be a democracy. And if it is a democracy and they say that they are one of the biggest, rather the biggest democracy of the world, this tendency, which is the direct byproduct of Hindutva and the concepts of Bajrang Dal and the extreme right of, the right which is ruling the Indian state since last about almost a decade. So I think this will eventually, the mere concept of being India as a democracy, I think it is going to be damaged by this the current wave of this extremism, and particularly this Hinduism, and also which is inwardly seen against these scheduled tribes and backward classes and other minorities in India.
Mr. Sindhu, do you feel that this violence against the low-caste Hindus is sponsored?
Yeah, absolutely. This is sponsored to actually change the demographic and social hue of Indian state from within, and to force these peoples either to subjugate themselves politically and socially, or to leave India in a form that they are so marginalized that either they are taken as a non-entity, or they are just outside any circle of influence or any participatory sort of a politics within the Indian political system. So, as far as the effect which this is going to have on Indian society, I would say that India actually cannot declare itself to be a purely a Hindu state, because this scheduled caste and scheduled tribes are almost 25%. And if you add on the Muslims, Christians, Jain, so almost 3/4 of India is non-Hindu in this terms. And, excluding such a big chunk of population from the mainstream, or trying to subjugate such a big chunk of a population, it is going to have its own repercussions. And I think if it continues and the Hindutva and this concept is continued, then I think the society, the Indian society, and especially the political system, will implode within itself.
You talk of implosion, you talk of subjugation. I would begin my next question with the word subjugation. This political or social subjugation, whether it be of the men or the women of the lower cadres of Hindus, whether it be in the form of rape, whether it be in the form of violence, is this going to continue? Because we have seen many such incidents in the past, but they have kind of gained momentum under this current BJP government. Will the people who have raped these women from the Dalits be ever put behind bars, will be put to justice?
I don't think so, because the group which is actually ruling India, and particularly which is there in the political decision making, it is the Nagpur group, which is a direct manifestation of the thoughts and the lineages with BJP and Bajrang Dal. And this Bajrang Dal and all other political setups of Hindutva are actually so extremist in their thoughts, and they have so much accommodated in every cadre of the governance, whether it be the lower judiciary, whether it be the police, the administration, and all other public departments which are there to serve people, that now I think it is very difficult that crimes or these sort of acts perpetrated against the scheduled people or the minorities will be, answered, or will be catered or will be tackled in a way that they should hope for any type of justice. So I think there is no hope at the end of the tunnel. And if this extreme thoughts and these extreme sort of, practices which is going on, if it continues, I think it is very difficult to say that India can recover itself from this bigotry of, sort of a autocratic democracy.
All right, Mr. Sindhu, I'd also like to refer you to the visit of Narendra Modi to the United States some time back, wherein there were more than 70 members of the US Senate and the House of Representatives that called on the Biden administration to highlight and to address the human rights concerns in his talks with Narendra Modi. Did anything happen? Will there be any follow-up?
You see, actually now the world is driven, it is no more a purely a geopolitical world, and it is no more a geopolitical worldview which is governing the political thoughts of different countries and the regions and even globally. It is actually basically geoeconomics. So the geoeconomics, dictates that India should be given due importance in the system. And to appease India, sometimes it is very ironical and it is very tragic that even the Western powers to be, which, actually are the champions of human rights, also the champion of the basic rights and the free and fair and freedom and liberty, these type of concepts, they even are not asking India to reform itself internally. And they even set aside these type of allegations as naming them and as blaming them to be an internal part of Indian, sort of a assimilation struggle between different groups, between different ethnic hues, and all sort of things. So this is basically a bigotry. I would not say that this is, they are trying to just put the issue under the carpet, but this is intentional bigotry on one hand, and the other thing is that as far as the new international architecture is concerned, as we know that to counter the emerging China, the surrogate which is being trained, which is being petted, and which is being used, that is India. So in terms of geoeconomics also, and in terms of geopolitical, aspirations also, they are not asking India to reform itself internally and not trying to sort of disturb, their relations or not sort of taint their relation with India at this moment.
But Mr. Sindhu, whatever is happening in India, whether it be in the present, whether it be what is happening in Haryana, whether it be what has happened in Manipur, whether what is happening to the Dalits, whether it is what is happening to the Muslims all across India and in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, isn't this a threat to the democratic world or the values of the global world? And secondly, seeing all of this happening and seeing no reaction coming from the global north as far as these human rights abuses are concerned, do you feel when the tipping point comes and when, as the head of Genocide Watch says, the genocide will actually begin and spread all across India, will it be then that the West will react or respond?
I don't think so that there is going to be a tipping point for this because, something which has not taken over the world, it is not the democratic ideas. It is basically the new capitalism in which the capitalist system has to be supported, whether it be, in the West or in any other country or, in any other region. But it has to be linked, supported and, made to survive whatever is going on regionally or internally in a country. So I don't think so that, the concerns of the West will, rise to the occasion and will, at some moment this is raised, the issue is raised with Indian government that, whatever that is going on with these type of minorities or the genocide is perpetrated against the scheduled caste or the Muslims or Christians, that should be addressed as per the international norms. I don't think so this will happen because of the reason that capitalist aspirations are, I think, that has overwhelmed the democratic norms of the world.
All right. In all of this global change that is happening that you've ably pointed out, the US does seem to monitor these human rights abuses that have been happening in India, as has been said in a statement by Anthony Blinken. But let's see if any kind of action is taken. This said, cultural Hinduism, whether it be through films, through television, meditation, yoga, have a lot of important soft power as far as the global north or the west is concerned. Do you feel that Narendra Modi has been taking advantage of this quote unquote soft power to put all the human rights abuses to one side?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question you have asked. You see, what India is doing, that in the West, they are applying their soft power through these meditations, through ashrams, through the Bollywood, and through other so many things, through Ayurvedic medicines, and a host of other things. And they're trying to sort of touch the, I would say, the psychological nerve of the Western people who are, due to their family system, their the internal bonds, they are, suffering from sort of, some worldly psychological issues, and they take refuge in these types of things, Ayurveda, in, meditations and sort of things. But, as far as in the region or internally, Modi is applying a concept of, as Joseph Nye has already said, smart power. Modi is applying the soft power also and the hard power also, and the combination of both, and trying to reassert the Indian state internally also and in the region also. And we have seen a lot of depiction of this. We have seen the Indians' relation with Nepal, with Bangladesh, with Sri Lanka, trying to also threaten Pakistan every other day on, by choosing any of the issue, be it Kashmir or terrorism or whatever is the web they use, and as it suits them at that point of time. So I think the ideology of Chanakya is now being applied in a very, very diligent way. Internationally, they are applying the soft power, and in the region, they are applying the smart power.
All right. Thank you so very much to have joined us, Abid, Latif, Sindhu, senior analyst. The fact remains that India and Indian human rights abuses and Indian abuses and Indian violence towards other sects, other communities, other religions, even lower caste Hindus is nothing new, but it is being perpetuated under the current BJP government. The only way that this can stop, the only way that this can end is by a certain pressure tactic by the global north. But is the global north ready to put pressure on India is the huge question mark that we would like to be answered in the days to come. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news stories segments that put into us, you and Pakistan. Allah Hafiz.